It's not often we actually get a look into the behind the scenes talks of how deals went down. At least we don't usually get behind the scene looks into this kind of things for a long time after something went down, but this is exactly what we just got out of an article from The Athletic, and I'm here to break it down for you. The ins and outs of the Contreras deal, why the Donovan deal has stalled out, and the Arenado trade market, where that's still standing. Welcome into the St. Louis Cardinals Daily Podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and yeah, The Athletic always does an excellent job. I highly suggest a subscription there or insight there, or I'll keep bringing to you the TLDR of all the stuff that goes down from them, with obviously without plagiarizing or not making you guys go subscribe to their great work, because it is excellent. But Katie Wu and Will Sammons of The Athletic wrote a wonderful article together that gives an incredible look into some of the dynamics of the Cardinals offseason. One of the benefits of losing Katie Wu to the big market, who we miss dearly covering our Cardinals, is that now when she's out here in the national market with all these connections, at least for the current time, she still has connections in St. Louis and is able to put out some great stories like she just did with Will Sammons. It was about a number of different players. It wasn't just a St. Louis-focused article, but a majority of it was, and it gave some great insights. So I want to break down where the Cardinals trade market is still standing right now. As last episode we went over what free agent moves I think would still make for our Redbirds. This is continuing our little trend here of looking into the Cardinals offseason, where we're hopefully going and where we have been already. So let's start out with the Donovan stall. I think all of us have kind of been on the same page here whenever initially things got going. Brendan Donovan seemed like the hot button guy out there. Everybody wanted Brendan Donovan. He was the hot girl at the party. He walked in, everyone was swooning for him in the trade market. Then this Ketel Marte guy came in, which took away a lot of thunder, and winter meetings came and went, and all of a sudden nothing happened until a Contreras deal came out of nowhere, yet Brendan Donovan is still sitting around. So Katie Wu and Will Sammons gave a little bit of insight on that, and they said the Wilson Contreras deal essentially had a big impact on the Brendan Donovan deal not happening yet. Here's what they had to say about that. Traction with the Donovan appeared to be building shortly after the winter meetings, with the Seattle Mariners and San Francisco Giants emerging as frontrunners. However, negotiations stalled as Contreras trade began to take shape. Now, the Red Sox have again come into the picture as a potential trade partner. The Cardinals and Red Sox have discussed a trade for Donovan, as The Athletic reported last week, with Boston looking for an additional middle infielder. So what you see Wu and Sammons put out there is that Donovan was getting tons and tons of discussions. Those weren't fabricated. It wasn't just big heads like myself getting out there in the media and saying all these things are happening that simply aren't. This was completely true due to Katie Wu's insight, most likely, being able to uncover that. And this Wilson Contreras thing started up between the Cardinals and the Red Sox, and it looks like the attention just went there. Now, I have to assume that since Donovan was the guy being discussed a whole bunch, Heim probably rolled up to his old buddies at the winter meetings, the Boston Red Sox, and said, hey, what you got going on? And I bet it started as a Donovan deal, and it probably merged into the Contreras deal. Because Contreras, as we reported before the winter meetings, was not expected to be dealt. He did not want to be dealt. In fact, is what he said. He was very comfortable with St. Louis. Contreras and his wife have come out in the public on social media and video and saying, hey, we wanted to stay in this town because we love the town and we love the Contreras' back. But he and the team both said it probably makes sense business-wise that they move on. And so after the Sonny Gray deal, he mentions a little bit of change happened. Quote again of that article, no deal with any team appears to be close, but with Contreras trade completed, St. Louis will now shift back to making Donovan a priority. Expect trade talks to pick up over the next couple of weeks. And a lot of this is happening now because the Contreras deal is now over with. Contreras felt a urge to get out of town after the Sonny Gray deal they mentioned. I think it probably set in his mind of, oh shoot, it's actually happening, because although people like us, Cardinals fans, who are tied into the media and are constantly looking at stuff on X and all over the internet, Contreras is probably like, yeah, a rebuild's underway, but what does that really mean? He wasn't probably filling himself in on that as much, and then this Gray deal happens and it becomes real. And then he changes his mind, and then he hears Boston, and he's in. Apparently, a offer came in from the New York Mets, or at least preliminary talks, I should say, came from the New York Mets. It was never clear if he'd be okay with going to New York. He was clearly okay with going to Boston because he does have that no trade clause. But yeah, so basically, Contreras deal kind of stalled out the Donnie deals, and now it looks like, according to the Athletic writers, that the Donnie deal's back on the forefront there. And that brings us to the insights they gave on the Contreras deal specifically. While this doesn't have as many ramifications as to what the Cardinals are going to be doing coming up, it's pretty cool to get to see the insight. Because again, Cardinals fans were really curious why this came out of nowhere. He wasn't getting traded. Contreras will be here next year, despite the front office probably not wanting him there as much. And then it came out that things changed. And yeah, again, a quote, shortly after Gray was traded, Contreras, who held a full no-trade clause with St. Louis, became more open to a trade. So that really did happen. This is like, I feel like we would try to piece this together in some sort of inappropriate storybook way of clearly this is what happened. We were given information. This is what happened. The Gray thing snapped him to realization. He ended up wanting a trade right after, which makes a ton of sense. Why would you want to be there if the team's clearly looking to move on and you're 33 years old? It doesn't make sense for you to be here anymore. And so now the Donnie deals are picking back up again. And I guess that's the next thing that we should really focus on and highlight is that a Donovan deal really is looking like it's going to be at the forefront of attention now. We can notice that in December 13th, we saw that article come out that I highlighted and many others highlighted that the Mariners and Giants became front runners at the winter meetings, and specific names were being tossed out. We talked about Colt Emerson and other guys for the Giants. That, again, wasn't fabricated. That wasn't out of nowhere. It's truly what happened is that Donovan was looking like he was going to get dealt. Bloom is playing it slow. This Contreras thing popped up, put things on hold. Guess what? Christmas happened. Chaim Bloom is probably being nice to his staff. He actually mentioned that jokingly in a presser at the winter meetings, that he tries to give his team time off in the winter. He doesn't promise anything because he had one time with the Rays where they weren't expected to do anything, and then somebody said on Christmas Day, we have to get it done today, and stuff happens. But hey, man, it's the holiday season. I think after we come out into 2026, we'll probably see a Donovan deal done. I would guess quickly. Again, I was more leaning towards the fact that maybe the Cardinals are going to be holding on to Donovan because of the delay now. But now we're getting more of an explanation as to why it hasn't happened yet. Now, I don't think we need to get rid of Donovan unless the deal makes sense, and Bloom's made that very obvious. Donovan's not a guy we need to get rid of for any reason. Great guy, great player. But it makes sense why there has been a delay. Last guy we need to look into who still could very well get traded is Nolan Arenado. I just can't see it how Nolan Arenado is a Cardinal at the end of 2026, I'll say. I guess I could see a world where we hold on to him and a team really only trades for him at the deadline. Shoot, if you're Nolan Arenado and you're on the Cardinals at the beginning of 2026, you better play with a guy with his hair on fire, which he normally does. I'm not saying he doesn't give effort, but you got to figure everything out because you almost got traded to a contender with the Houston Astros before he turned down the deal, viewing himself too highly. And now he's going to be on a bad team who has no hopes of winning. And Arenado, buddy, you're getting up there in age. You're not going to be a piece that a lot of people want in the next couple of years if you're hoping to contend for a World Series, which he's made very clear is his full intentions. Otherwise, why not just hang out in St. Louis? He wants to get out, but he only wants to go to certain teams. Buddy, we try to give you an out, but he's going to have to think through some of the things he wants. And one of those things might be going back to Los Angeles because Salmons and Katie Woo have mentioned that the Los Angeles Angels are one of the few teams who have actually made offers and negotiations with the Cardinals. It's yet to be seen if Nolan Arenado is willing to go there. But this one would make sense if Nolan Arenado looks around the league and he realizes nobody wants him because he's an aged asset that costs a lot of money and he should have taken that trade to the Astros last year. Why not go home? He's well known for being from Southern California, not the Anaheim area, but more from Los Angeles. But it would make a ton of sense for him to go back home if he's not going to end up competing anyway. Another team that Salmons and Wu mentioned being in contention for Arenado, a team that I brought up just the other day, the Arizona Diamondbacks make a ton of sense. They're trying to compete. They're trying to retool. In the Diamondbacks instance, we would probably have to eat a ton of the money. I'm not saying I want this to happen. People in the comments are understandably upset of why would we move a guy if we're going to pay half or more of his salary? I guess the reason for it would be because it frees up playing time for the younger guys, which is an incredibly big asset. And, well, even if you're paying half of it, are you a glass half full or glass half empty guy? You're not paying the other half. So that is why it would make sense. I'm not saying what I would do if I was the president of baseball operations, but that is why Chaim Bloom might look to do that. So the Diamondbacks would again make sense. They're trying to compete still. I do think Nato offers something, and we've seen them bring in veteran third basemen in the past on short-term deals to try to get something out of him, add some leadership to the clubhouse. Again, Evan Longoria being a very recent example of that happening. And just to throw out there in general, there's the three guys that the Cardinals are most likely going to move, just to kind of cap off this final bit on where our trade outlooks are this year. Brandon Donovan, Nolan Arenado, and again, keep an eye out for Lars Nootbaar. Very well could be traded this offseason. We have a lot of lefty bats. It's easy enough to find outfielders to replace him. I hope Newt stays. If nothing more than just get to yell Newt every time he steps up to plate, that's a reason to go to the ballpark, and I do think he has a ton of upside. We'll keep covering your Redbirds. Again, go check out that article on The Athletic from Katie Wu and Will Sammons. They did an excellent job laying out them and many more players if you're looking to see more coverage of the league. But here, we're covering your Redbirds every single day. Again, my name is Andrew Teuscher. See you next time.